evening and welcome. You're watching Primetime News on TV1, bringing you the news. I'm Tharusha Kumar Singha, and here is a look at your headlines for tonight.
2 flying squadrons of the Air Force awarded with presidential colors. China approves a loan of $1.1 billion to Sri Lanka. Construction commences on 350 megawatt LNG combined cycle power plant. Final report of the Presidential Commission probing April attacks presented to the Amarapura Ramanya Samagiri Mahasangha Council today.
On to the top story for the day, the presentation of President's colours to the number 5 fighter squadron and the number 6 helicopter squadron of the Sri Lanka Air Force took place at the Sri Lanka Air Force base in Katunayaka today.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa presented colours to the number 5 fighter squadron and the number 6 helicopter squadron of the Sri Lanka Air Force to coincide with the 70th anniversary of the Sri Lanka Air Force. The Commander-in-Chief's highest honour bestowed on an armed force is the Presidential Colour Award. Accordingly, the Sri Lanka Air Force has been awarded 13 presidential colours thus far.
The Air Force and other armed services must continue to play their central role in maintaining our national security, ensuring that all citizens are safe and have a secure environment in which they can live without fear. If a country does not have peace and security, freedom of the people will be obviously at peril, and day-to-day activities of private and public sectors will be greatly hampered as we had witnessed in the past. No investor will come to a country that cannot guarantee national security. These and many other reasons made us grant top priority to restore national security and ensure law and order in the society.
After the ceremony, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa engaged in an inspection tour of the number 2 and number 5 squadron of the C-130 aircraft at the Katunayaka Air Force Base. President Rajapaksa also inspected the aircraft belonging to the Indian Air Force that are currently on display at the aerobatic show and posed for a group picture with the pilots. The book, authored by Air Commodore Channa Disanayaka on 70 years of service of the Air Force, was also presented to the President.
Meanwhile, China has approved loans amounting to $1.1 billion to Sri Lanka.
The China Development Bank will endorse a $500 million loan to Sri Lanka. In addition, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka and the Bank of China will reach into a currency swap agreement with 2 billion yuan or $600 million within the next couple of weeks. Quoting sources, the official Twitter handle of the Belt and Road Initiative in Sri Lanka has also made the announcement in this regard.
The registrar of the Asgiriya chapter of the Siam sect, Venerable Madagama Dhammananda Thero, expressed his views today regarding the foreign policy of our country.
International investors will be reluctant to invest in a country where there is a culture of underhand monetary commissions. When making investment decisions and allocating resources, the government should give priority to investors from European countries. This will reduce the international pressure on our country, particularly the pressure exerted by Western countries. By strengthening our ties with the Western world, Sri Lanka can see ease of pressure in Geneva. Maintaining strong ties with at least a few European countries will benefit us, as the entire European community works hand in hand. Sri Lanka has continuously failed to manage its foreign policies. We have always managed our foreign policies in 2 dimensions, the West and the East. If Sri Lanka has managed its foreign policies properly, we could have mitigated the pressure we are currently facing. Today, we are left with only alternatives. We must either side with China or with America and India. Sri Lanka is stuck between 2 superpowers. Today, there are only a few countries like China and Russia to support Sri Lanka in Geneva. A group of investors who wanted to invest in a tyre factory in Sri Lanka had been asked to pay a commission to go forward with the investment. These investors refused to go forward with the investment project. They did not agree to pay a commission. Investments from the Middle East, however, include the commission in the cost of the project.
Commenting on the investment projects and international relations, the Foreign Secretary expressed these views to the Indian media regarding the West Container Terminal project at the Colombo port.
When the president was compelled, I use the word compelled, because of the public pressure coming from the trade union not to give the East Container Terminal to anyone, he had to give in to the pressure or the people's power. But then I think he had the option that the West Container Terminal, it is much longer, much wider, it has more space, and it is not built. I mean, it is, it is something which has to come out. So the total ownership.
Many criticize the UN-led government and claim that Ranil Wickremesinghe and Malik Samarawikrama were brokers selling national assets to foreign factions. The general public wanted a government, a leader who will save and protect our country's national assets. However, the present government is continuing to sell national assets of this country. Take a look at the government's foreign policy. The construction of the Norechole power plant has been given to China. And to balance it out, they gave the Sampur power plant to India. This is the nature of their policy on foreign relations. The development of the South Container Terminal of the Colombo port was given to China, and today 38% of the total container operations are carried out by a Chinese entity. India asked for the East Container Terminal, but due to opposition from trade unions, they refrained from going forward with it. But later the government agreed to give away the West Container Terminal. The Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Relations in an interview to an Indian newspaper had said that the West Container Terminal is more valuable than the East Container Terminal. The government now claims that the West Container Terminal is more valuable than the East Container Terminal in terms of its depth, length and location. They now say that the government gave the best terminal to India. This is similar to selling items at a market. But is this what the people wanted? The people who wanted to protect the country's national assets have been deceived. It was India's Adani Group that succeeded in this context. While the West Container Terminal is being heavily discussed, an issue concerning a feasibility study conducted by an Indian company on a project to develop the LNG infrastructure for power generation in Sri Lanka has arisen. Newspapers reported that the Asian Development Bank has handed over the feasibility study to PwC India. The newspaper reported that the consultants hired from PwC India to conduct the feasibility study do not have qualifications required from the bank, and that PwC India is not an LNG terminal/floating storage regasification unit or FSRU designed consultancy firm. Meanwhile, Indian media reported that India's securities regulator has banned PwC India from auditing listed companies in the country for 2 years in 2018 after it failed to spot a $1.7 billion fraud at a company. Media reports added that PwC's Indian audit had neglected to check glaring anomalies in the financial details reported by a company whose downfall followed one of the worst financial scandals in Indian corporate history.
The construction work of the first liquid natural gas power plant or LNG power plant in Sri Lanka was inaugurated today under the patronage of Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. The 350 megawatt liquid natural gas power plant will be established in Kerawala-Pitiya. The project will cost 40 billion rupees and is expected to be completed within a period of 21 months.
Our target is to provide power to the people of this country at the lowest possible price. The construction of a 350 megawatt liquid natural gas power plant will commence today. This is a big move in the country's energy sector. We will always strive to introduce new methods to gain power. The first coal power plant, the first solar power plant, the first thermal power plant, and most recently, we opened the first facility to generate power through waste material. Our actions were never limited to words.
As it was mentioned in your headlines for tonight, the final report of the Presidential Commission that probed the April 21st attacks in 2019 was presented to the Amarapura Ramanya Samagri Mahasangha Council today.
The Commission report was presented to the Mahanayaka of the Ramanya sect, Agamaha Pandita, Most Venerable Makulave Vimalatheru last evening by the Director General of the Legal Affairs of the Presidential Secretariat, Harigupta Rohanadera. The Commission report was also presented to the Mahanayaka of the Amarpura sect, Most Venerable Gantune Assajitero this evening.
There is an allegation that many pages in the Presidential Commission report have been hidden or that some have gone missing. They used the April 21st attacks to come to power by convincing people that there is no national security. Who is attempting to establish security by misplacing the documents relating to the report? We can say that the government is involved in this to a certain extent. The society believes that these documents are being concealed to protect individuals who are allies of the government. They are resorting to tricks before the public. That is a crime that affects the society.
The Attorney General is saying that there are 80 volumes and that he has been allowed only to peruse 64 of them. When questions are raised on why the remaining volumes cannot be given to the Attorney General, they say that it is due to a matter surrounding national security. If we consider the April 21st attacks, it seems that everyone knew about it. The President, Prime Minister, Opposition Leader, parliamentarians and ministers were aware of an impending attack. The police and the army also knew about it. Even Mahinda Rajapaksa knew about it, although he pretends otherwise. Ultimately, the innocent devotees who attended church on that day were the ones who did not know about an impending attack. They are referring to the protection of top figures when talking about national security. Once the truth has been revealed, why do they have to hide the report? The society must be aware of this if the government has taken responsibility for national security. Therefore, the report must be shown to us.
The present government is claiming the credit for something that our government deserves. This commission was appointed by Maithripala Sirisena. Since the President and the Prime Minister pledged the Cardinal that this matter would be resolved in 2 weeks after coming into power, they could have taken swift measures instead of depending or relying on the commission of Maithripala Sirisena. What are they trying to say? They are saying that they did not appoint the commission. If the commission appointed by another government is not useful, they could have implemented a work plan in line with their so-called efficient mechanism.
We did not appoint this commission. It was the previous government that appointed this. As the government, we don't have a need to protect or harbour any individual. I am of the stance that the wrongdoers must be punished regardless of their status. Various views are being expressed on this. It is Basil Rajapaksa who is being identified as a dual citizen, but he does not have a need to promote extremists. He took steps to bring victory to our camp without the support of extremists at the previous elections. Therefore, we oppose the allegations that are being levelled against him.
As you witnessed, various remarks are being expressed over the report of the Presidential Commission that was appointed to probe the April 21st attacks and a possible influence from foreign entities on the incident. Against such a backdrop, a discourse has arisen on the Provincial Council elections as well. A group of former Provincial Council representatives of the ruling party today said that the Provincial Council elections should be held.
It is unfortunate to note that certain factions within the government are attempting to postpone the holding of the provincial council election by presenting various arguments against it. Political parties that are incapable of securing seats at the election are the ones presenting such arguments. Officials of the National Election Commission had informed President Gotabaya Rajapaksa that the provincial council elections could be held in June this year. They had requested the president to make arrangements to hold the election as well. The president in response had said to take the necessary steps if an environment conducive to hold the election was in place. The founder of our party, Basil Rajapaksa, is of the stance that our party should always act to ensure the people's mandate is given priority.
අපේ පක්ෂ නිර්මාතෘවරයා බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමා ප්‍රකාශ කරලා තියෙනවා. දැන් සරත් වීරසේකර අමාත්‍යවරයා කියනවා පළාත් සභා අවශ්‍ය නැහැ තියන්න එපා කියලා. එතුමා කොහෙද ඉන්නේ? එතුමාගේ මේ දේශ බෞද්ධ එතුමා පක්ෂ නෙමෙයිද? මේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොදු ජන පෙරමුණේ නෙමෙයිද? එතුමා ඒක පක්ෂයේ මතේ නෙමෙයි. ඒක එතුමා පක්ෂ නෙමෙයිද? එතුමාගේ දේශපාලන නෑ ඔබතුමා කිව්වේ පක්ෂයේ එහෙම පක්ෂය තුල එහෙමයි නෑ කියලා. එහෙම නෑ පක්ෂය තුල එහෙම එකක් ඔය ඔය ඔබතුමාලා කිව්වේ අර කකුලෙන් අදිනවා කියලා එයාලටද? ඒක කවුද? උගරට පේනවනේ ජනමාධ්‍ය තුල දැන්.
We saw how certain politicians challenged our party and attempted to influence a change of party leadership. You saw how Minister Veeravansa attempted to speak to the media and proposed that our party leadership should be changed.
ඒ කියන්නේ මේ කකුලෙන් අදින විමල් වීරවංශ මහත්තයෝරයාද? විමල් වීරවංශ මහත්මයා පක්ෂයේ නායකත්වය වෙනස් කරන්න කියලා කතා කළා කියන එක ඔබතුමාලා දන්නවද? නෑ මම පළාත් සභාවට කකුලෙන් අදින්නේ. පළාත් සභාව පිළිබඳව අපිට හිතෙනවා එතුමාලා තමයි මේ කාරණා තුල ඉන්නේ කියලා. නෑ ඔබතුමාලා හිතන්නේ නැද්ද පළාත් සභා නියෝජිතයෝ විදියට මේ අපේ ජනාධිපතිතුමා අතිගරු ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ ජනාධිපතිතුමාට මේ පක්ෂයේ ඉහළ තනතුරක් හිමි විය යුතුයි කියලා. මම හිතන්නේ මේ යම් කෙනෙකුට පක්ෂය ඇතුලේ අර්බුද නිර්මාණය කරන්න අර මම කලින් කිව්වා වගේ බඳපටියෙන් පහළ දේශපාලන මේ යෝජනා ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න පුළුවන්කම තියෙනවා. හැබැයි යථාර්ථයේදී තොරද මේ අපේ ජනාධිපතිතුමා ඊළඟ ජනාධිපතිවරණයට ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා යම් කතා බහක් ලක් වෙනවා. එතකොට මේ බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ මහත්තයා ඊළඟ ජනාධිපතිවරණයට ආවොත් ඔබතුමාලා සහාය දෙනවද කොහොමද? එකක් එනකන්ද බලන් ඉන්නේ. එකක් අධිකරණ ජනාධිපතිතුමා මේ පිළිබඳව අභ්‍යන්තරය හෝ පිට ප්‍රකාශයක් කරලා තියෙනවා කියන එක පිළිබඳව අපිට දැනගන්න නැහැ.
Meanwhile, parliamentarian Shantha Bandara assured that the Sri Lanka Freedom Party will not leave the government.
Do not ask if the Sri Lanka Freedom Party will leave this government. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party will not leave the government. The SLFP gave its fullest support to bring President Gotabaya Rajapaksa into power. The fault does not lie with the party. It is the fault of the leaders of the party who make bad decisions. We have solved that issue now. Now we are all on the same path of building this nation again. We saw how several others suggested that we leave if we wanted to. If we leave, it will not be easy for them. It's neither good for the country nor the government.
The human-elephant conflict is yet another issue that stems from the negligence of politicians. While the politicians are split into different parties and thrash each other, the people are in constant struggle to protect their cultivations, properties and their lives. Several valuable human lives were lost within the last 24 hours due to the human-elephant conflict.
This is the Rathambalagama area in Hambegamua, Thanamalvilla, which has been prone to constant encroachment from wild elephants in the recent past. According to the locals in the area, the absence of a proper electric fence is the main reason for the wild elephants to encroach on their villages. These wild elephants not only destroy their paddy lands, but takes away the precious lives of many villagers as well. Sunil Gunawardana, a 62-year-old resident of Rathambalagama, had to face such an unfortunate fate. Sunil had worked day and night for 4 months to save his crops from wild elephants. Just like every other day, Sunil visited his paddy field to chase away the wild elephants who were tempted by the scent of freshly harvested paddy. But on that day, Sunil did not return home. Another death due to wild elephant attacks was reported in the Gargamo area. The deceased was a 63-year-old father of 3. The Gargamo area has been the victim of wild elephant attacks for years now. So far this year, 4 deaths have been reported in Gargamo.
Reaching the hearts of the people everywhere, from door to door, village to village. Leadership that is changing lives across Sri Lanka. Gammadda.
We cross over to a short commercial break. Stay with News First. More news on the other side.
Struggling to find reliable plumbers, electricians, gardeners and other service providers? Bellboys got you covered.
Welcome back to the news. Veteran journalist and senior diplomat Bandula Jayasekara bid his final goodbye this morning. He was 60 years old at the time of his demise.
As a senior journalist and broadcaster, Bandula Jayasekara strived hard to provide a voice for the voiceless while hosting Newsfirst's Patikoda program on Sirasa TV covering social, economic and political challenges in the country. Born on the 29th of December 1960, Bandula Jayasekara was a distinguished past pupil of Trinity College, Kandy. He pursued his higher education in mass media at the Nehru University in New Delhi and later in life was Sri Lanka's proud flag bearer in Canada, the United States and lastly in Australia. The late Mr. Jayasekara served as the chief editor of the Daily News and a columnist at the Island newspaper. His love for the people was strengthened further when he joined the Sirasa Media Network in the latter part of his career. Despite being diagnosed with a rare blood cancer and seeking overseas treatment, Bandula Jayasekara attended Newsfirst's programs upon returning to the country.
How do you want to be remembered? You may not believe what I am saying. I like to be forgotten. Except my last will, I have made a request that I am a romantic fool for us. So I have said I want a bugler playing, because I watched this movie From Here to Eternity, the famous movie where Montgomery Clift plays the bugle. So I have said it, I want a bugler to play, but I don't want to. I think the sooner we are forgotten, it helps.
Bandula Jayasekara attended his final event on the 3rd of February during the inauguration of a palliative care unit at the General Sir John Kotalawala Defence University. He breathed his last while receiving treatment at the Palliative Care Centre in Karapitiya, Galle. Bandula Jayasekara's remains will lie in repose at the A. Freeman Parlour in Borella until the final rites are performed at the Borella Cemetery at 3 p.m. tomorrow. Dear Bandula Jayasekara, may you attain the bliss of Nirvana.
The process of burying those who died of COVID-19 commenced today.
2 acres in the Sudupatine Chene area of the Ottamavadi Divisional Secretariat in Batticaloa has been allocated for the burial of COVID-19 deceased. The first burials of COVID-19 victims commenced today. We first buried the remains of 2 individuals who passed away due to the pandemic, and the remains of another 5 will be buried this evening. We are currently working on burying the remains of COVID-19 deceased in other areas at the same burial site.
Chairman of the Export Development Board Suresh Dimel says a free trade agreement with China would boost Sri Lanka's efforts to diversify its export market base.
Recently, the Cabinet approved a proposal submitted by the Trade Minister Honorable Bandula Gunawadana to enter into new free trade agreements. If a carefully negotiated free trade agreement is signed with China, it would greatly assist us to diversify our narrow export market base where we are over-reliant on just a few markets. However, it is extremely essential that views from a large cross-section of stakeholders are taken into consideration to make sure that local industry is not impacted negatively.
The petition filed by indigenous community leader Uruvarge Vangilatto and the Centre for Environmental Justice against the clearing of forest lands in the Rambakanoe Forest Reserve was fixed for hearing by the appeal court on the 3rd of May today.
The petitioners had sought a court order to halt the clearing of lands near Pullebadde in Ramakanoya by ruling that such activities were illegal and to recover the losses caused by the damages. They had also requested the court to issue an interim order on carrying out construction work on lands that have been cleared near the Ramakanoya Forest Reserve. The petitioners had also requested the appeal court to issue an interim order preventing the Mahaweli authority from entering into agreements to give away lands for large-scale cultivations. During today's hearing, Additional Solicitor General Palitha Ranasinghe told the bench, comprising appeal court president Justice Arjuna Jayasekara and Justice Mayadunne Korea, that the clearing of lands given by the Mahaweli authority for maize cultivation has been completely halted at present. The Additional Solicitor General added that he had personally witnessed the site at which deforestation had taken place before the petition had been filed in court. However, Attorney-at-Law Ravindranath Dabare, appearing for the petitioners, argued that the process of clearing lands is continuing to take place near the Ramakan Oya Forest Reserve. Accordingly, the appeal court ordered that objections can be filed in court on the 23rd of April.
The defendants informed the court that it has maps and documents that can assist the judge bench in hearing this case. Accordingly, the court ordered the defendants to submit all relevant documents. Based on information received by us, deforestation is continuing to take place in the area. We will inquire into this and file a motion in court to obtain the relevant orders.
Residents and members of the indigenous community have continuously pointed out that clearing lands near the Ramakan Oya Forest Reserve for large-scale farming bears grave consequences. This was how these activities were opposed at their inception.
Claudia Zelenica, or commonly known as the Daruluwe Panukarada, is at a state of risk yet again due to a statement made by the Minister of Highways recently.
My state minister said that if we are to avoid the ordained tree, it will cost another 8 billion, which means it will cost 6.7 billion to build 82 kilometers. An estimated 8.7 billion will cost to avoid the ordained tree. A decision regarding this hasn't been reached yet.
President of the Organization to Protect Archaeological Artifacts visited Daruluwe this afternoon.
The majority of this country is Sinhala Buddhists. The Sangika method is the language majority of the country comprehend. We know that a tree can't be ordained simply by covering it with a robe. What is important to us is the biodiversity of the ecosystem and its historical significance. The people will only question if we say it to them in a manner they can understand. As the Mahasangha, we would like to remind the minister not to insult the Sangika method, which is 2,500 years old.
A fire erupted atop the Demodara mountain in the Ravanayala Forest Reserve this evening.
Our correspondent reported that the fire at the Demodara mountain in the Ravanayala Forest Reserve had erupted at around 3 a.m. today. According to our correspondent, the blaze had destroyed around 10 acres of land in the mountain. The fire is reported to have spread rapidly due to the dry weather in the area.
Sri Lankan human rights activist and attorney-at-law Ranita Jnanaraja is among the recipients of this year's International Women of Courage Award presented by the United States Secretary of State.
Secretary of State Anthony J. Blinken will host the annual International Women of Courage Awards virtual ceremony to honor a group of extraordinary women from around the world on Monday. The First Lady of the United States, Dr. Jill Biden, will deliver remarks to recognize the courageous accomplishments of these women. In a press release, the U.S. Department of State described Ranita Jnanaraja as a lawyer who continues to fight for and defend the rights of the marginalized and vulnerable communities in the country despite threats and challenges by the state. It adds that Ranita had dedicated her career to accountability and justice for victims of enforced disappearances and prisoners who were often detained under Sri Lanka's Prevention of Terrorism Act by providing free legal aid and related services. Now in its 15th year, the Secretary of State's IWOC Award recognizes women from around the globe who have demonstrated exceptional courage and leadership in advocating for peace, justice, human rights, gender equality and women's empowerment, often at great personal risk and sacrifice.
We leave you tonight with some views expressed regarding the children during an event today. We brought you the news. I'm Tarasha Kumar Singh along with our sign language interpreter Fortuna Taraka Gabriel. Good night.
The epilogue.
මගේ දෙමව්පියෝ ජීවත් වෙන්නේ දෙමරගොඩ ප්‍රදේශයේ මිහිඳු සෙන්පුර මහල් නිවාස. පොඩි ළමයි අවුරුදු 10.
My parents were residents of Mihindu Sempura flats in Dematagota. Children between the ages of 13 and 14 are victims of a new wave of drugs. Children will not go to the smugglers asking for drugs like ice, cocaine, heroin to sell. It happens because of a certain level of influence imposed by adults. In certain instances, it's the family members who force these things on children they are related to. Do you think the police and the public are unaware of this? They do know. Sometimes the police blackguard young female children in profanity. They are aware of these things. If there are any politicians in the building in Devanna who care about the nation, our country will not have a level of child abuse like this. It won't be there.
Devanna ඔය මැද්දේ ඒ තියෙන ඒ බිල්ඩින් එකේ ඉන්නවා නම් අපේ රට අද මේ තාක් දුරට ළමා ඉන්සිඩන්ට් ගැන කතා කරන තැනට ඇවිල්ලා නැහැ. එන්නේ.
There is only one measurement to measure the development of a country. What is that measurement? It is how the citizens of the country treat their women and how the adults of the country care for the children. Even though roads and buildings are built and international products are available for consumption, a country will not develop.